Marvel TV is back this week after quite a long break for the standards that they set in the first couple of years after a divisive, but for me, I don't know, I thought it was excellent finale of She-Hulk. I thought they really pulled that show together by the end. But again, split opinion, that show, as a lot of Marvel shows have. So we are going to dive deep into the discourse for the next 6 weeks because we are, of course, at a very interesting standpoint of time for Marvel as we discuss Secret Invasion for the 6 episode run. And joining me to discuss this episode under slightly less duress than the poor Skrull who Gravik ordered to shift him on a bench so he could keep an eye on Nick Fury. I don't think that's okay, Gravik. It is the one, the only, my Marvel guy, Dan Lynham. You're very welcome to page 180 again. How are you feeling on the eve of this? Marvel TV is back. How's that kind of sitting with you? What does that mean to you these days?
Marvel TV, because as much as we've discussed in the past that the movies are like, comic book movies, they shouldn't be lumped in with other films and such, that going back to this weekly format is really similar to obviously how you'd explore a certain title. So this shorter wait time between episodes and everything, I just think it lends itself really well to the comic book feel of what they're trying to establish. So I was a big fan of Loki. I loved Falcon Winter Soldier. So this one I'm very interested in because they seems to have gone in a different direction, but I figured that's where they were gonna go. So I'm stoked.
Okay, exciting times. Yeah, look, I love a Marvel TV show because it's like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not up to the same standards. It's probably not a Succession, probably not a Last of Us, probably not a HBO Prestige TV quality level, but like I don't care about that. I like just getting the opportunity to discuss Marvel weekly and kind of how the TV shows on a weekly session move along the MCU in a way that we've never experienced before until they brought out this. So I'm a fan of it and I'm looking forward to our discussions. But before we discuss episode 1, we're going to get back into the mindset of episode 1 as we always do with our alternate recap for episode 1, which of course was called Resurrection. And we join the action in present day Moscow, which, wow, Marvel, you're jumping right in at the deep end there, aren't you? Everett Ross gets in a scrap with Agent Prescott, who has a theory that Skrulls are behind the recent global unrest. Ross kills Prescott and gets away before falling off a roof while being pursued by what turns out to be Talos and being revealed to be a Skrull. That's Ross was revealed to be a Skrull, as Talos is a Skrull already. And one paragraph into this recap, and I'm realizing this is going to be an absolute bitch to recap every week. Fury returns from Saber, and Hill takes him to see Talos, who explained that Gravik has essentially become the Andrew Tate of Skrulls. He's a massively influential scumbag who's just really bitter that he got ghosted when it comes down to it, in this case by Fury after the blip. Fury needs a walk to process all of this, but gets bundled into the back of a van and taken to see Olivia Colman Sonya, who refuses to team up with him, mainly because Snake's on a plane. Look, different standard to what she's used to, if we're being real here. Fury and Talos track down and kill a Chechen Skrull who's making the bombs for the Skrulls' next plan, and Talos finds out the bomb is being delivered to his daughter Gaia, aka Amelia Clark, and henceforth to be known on page 180 as Skrullisi. Skrullisi tries to play both sides against each other, so she always comes out on top and tells Talos the attack is planned for Unity Day. What she doesn't reveal is that her and Tommy out of Love Hate are working as decoys. No, he's not walking around in the nip like Tommy and Love Hate, but they are carrying fake bombs to allow Gravik to set off the real things and pretending to be Fury, Hill, Maria Hill. I haven't seen something this dastardly happen in present day Moscow since exactly the last thing that I saw happen in present day Moscow. And ladies and gentlemen, that was episode 1 of Secret Invasion Resurrection. Dan, we are back in the MCU on a weekly basis. Again, you said you were a fan of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Didn't know that. Interesting take. This is a lot of similarities, I thought, in tone to that. What were your first impressions of Secret Invasion?
Uh, it was kind of like Jason Bourne with Skrulls. So we are, well, maybe more Mission Impossible. I don't know, but the Secret Invasion stuff in the comics is very interesting because it's so very superhero centric, and this feels like it's going in a completely different direction. Obviously, they want to cover as many different subgenres as they can, and this is very much the spy, espionage, subterfuge sort of element of it. And it does feel like how they've marketed, how the first episode has gone, that this is building to something much, much bigger that I think we're not going to see pan out during Secret Invasion. I think this is going to be a setup after what we discussed with Guardians being its own self-contained element. This very much already feels like it's back to the bigger picture for me.
Okay, interesting. I love it. For me, I think this is a promising start, but not a guaranteed winner just yet. It feels like
Yep.
on one level, it feels like we're kind of playing with Sam Jackson and the B team to a point. Although obviously you have like A-list stars like Emilia Clarke and Olivia Colman in there, and that obviously is always going to help your project. There's also, again, like you said, a nice refreshing return to the spy thriller element of Marvel, which I think I don't know, that has never been my necessarily favorite element of Marvel. It's something that I like. It's definitely not something that I dislike, but it's never been my favorite. But I do think it's really refreshing, and I think it's needed to kind of ground Marvel back in kind of. I know we're dealing with aliens who can hide and stuff like that as well, but in as realistic as you're going to get in a Marvel project. And I think if only just to get away from the kind of multiverse mess that they're caught in, where the future of that is now being played out in court, thanks to Jonathan Major's legal trouble. So again, just getting away from that altogether for the time being is probably a good thing. And just remind us why we like Marvel. I think if they manage to keep it somewhat self-contained, and I do agree with you, we will discuss in theories that I don't think this is just a 6-episode one and done. But if they can kind of resist their worst impulses to kind of blow up this story with kind of tie-ins and pointless fan service and cameos and stuff like that, and they can keep this an interesting story within 6 episodes, has potential to be a hugely needed win and to get Marvel a bit of momentum, because again, they are coming off what we both agreed was an excellent Guardians of the Galaxy movie, so it gets them a bit of momentum again and restores some of our faith in it. But recent history has also made me a bit cautious of believing that it can be much better than Falcon and Winter Soldier. I wasn't as big on that. I enjoyed elements of it as well. I don't think it was a bad show, but like I wasn't as high on that. So again, I'm kind of in the middle now, but again, it is a promising start. I say promising start, but there's a lot of controversy around the actual start of this, particularly the introduction credits, where there's a lot of controversy around this. And I know obviously as well, like, you know, you've a lot of history in art and graphic design and so on. So this is probably a subject close to your home. There was a decision made. I don't know why Marvel, who are taking a lot of heat, would make this decision in this day and age, to make the credits AI based. So basically they farmed out, rather than using actual artists, they farmed it out to an AI company to design the credits for them. What were your thoughts on this? I imagine you have some strong thoughts.
It was very much am I seeing this sort of thing? Before a lot of the controversy about AI art hit the platforms in which it was discussed heavily, like Instagram or other lesser known ones like DeviantArt, where it was more like a call to arms. There was a very short period that everyone's already forgotten about, of no more than a couple of weeks, where a lot of recording artists and stuff were using AI art to make pretty impressive videos before we understood what was going into it. And it's the use of other people's assets to create this automatically generated art, and down to the artist's signatures, which is what's causing all of the trouble. AI art is going to be a very touchy subject going forward, because it's one of these things like vaping. You're told it's universally uncool and it's bad for you, but people still do it anyway. The AI art is the vaping of the art world, I feel.
Feeling very attacked here now with my vaping hand.
I knew it was going to be very topical, so I decided to go right for the source to show people I'm not being biased.
Fair.
So, yeah. But that's what it is. I do think there can be a place for AI art. It's the big problem is where they're getting the source material from, which is essentially plagiarism from hardworking artists. Now, I have no idea. No one really will until they admit it, as to what assets they use to create this art. It could have been from their own library. I doubt it. It could have been a lot of other artists submitting their work. I doubt it. It could be public domain. I kind of doubt that as well. I think it's unfortunately going to be the way most people are sourcing their stuff. But I did do a double take. I kind of tried to think that maybe when this was being done originally, it was the time when AI art was seen as an okay thing to do because people didn't understand it. And it was done, it was paid for. Maybe they felt like they could roll out, but it has become an issue. So I was kind of thinking to myself, why didn't they just go with a Breaking Bad style intro? You know, just secret invasion, Greenbacker and Splash, get some intern to do it, and then it's done. The money they would have invested in the intro, yes, would have been lost, but it was, call a spade a spade. It was a stupid decision. They should have cut their losses and realized it was gonna end up like that.
Yeah. It was a massive, it's a massive own goal for a Marvel studios who don't need own goals right now badly. Also, like, you wouldn't mind if it came back and it was quite good, but we all kind of knew it was AI art straight away, even if you're not keeping up with the discourse that you're so poignantly explaining, and thanks for that. But you knew it because it was bad. It's like, they don't look like Skrulls. That's like, like whatever they typed into their chat GPT there, it was like, put aliens are humans. You know what I mean? They didn't put
Yeah,
Skrulls. They didn't like, and it's not like there's a shortage of artwork out there. At the very
yeah,
least, they have like years and years worth of the comics that they could fall back on, that they could use that
yeah,
artwork, and you're not plagiarized as well. So yeah, it was just a spectacular old goal from Marvel.
yeah.
And again, not
Sam
even good.
Jackson, green, enter. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It really, really was. Speaking of Sam Jackson, Nick Fury came back here and he's kind of playing him very differently. He's playing him as kind
Yeah,
of damaged, isolated, and traumatized from the blip, which for me, again, we just haven't seen a lot of them. Like, we've seen only bits of
yeah,
them since then. We obviously saw him at the end of Infinity War. Then we got the kind of his origin story, I suppose, in Captain Marvel. And then we got, we saw him at the end of Endgame at Tony Stark's funeral. And then we saw a clip of him in the post-credit scene, obviously, in post-credit scene of Far From Home, kind of just chilling with the Skrulls. But did
yeah.
this feel earned to you, this character turn? Are you on board with this arc? I can see what they're going for, getting him back in the game, but I'm only believing that he is this way because they've told me. I feel like they're telling me and they haven't shown me. Now, they have time to do so. They've got 6 weeks to kind of do flashbacks and stuff like that, and they kind of tease that here. How are you feeling about this?
I feel that it feels a little bit odd. I don't want to say out of character, and this whole thing of like leaving behind what the comic book depiction was a long time ago. I'm cool with that because we've discussed numerous times that they're moving in a different direction. So something about it just, I don't even want to say it didn't sit right with me. It just didn't feel like Nick Fury. It felt like Samuel L. Jackson was playing a Samuel L. Jackson character. And who that was, I'm not exactly sure. But was it Nick Fury? It didn't really feel like Nick Fury. Like, is that what you kind of felt as well?
Yeah, I like how you say that, because one of my notes that I took is, and I liked this because this is my favorite character, my favorite movie of all time. But at one stage during the interrogation, he became Jules from Pulp Fiction. Like, you know, where he was like, everyone
Yeah,
gets one lie, nobody gets two. And he goes into Sam Jackson interrogation mode. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's brilliant. It's one of the most thrilling things you can see an actor do, because that is him at his absolute peak. But yeah, it's not something we've seen Nick Fury do before. Even just like choices that they made, that he just abandoned the Skrulls. That doesn't seem like in keeping with a choice that he'd make, and we don't understand that yet. Again, we have time, so I'm not turning around and saying that this is a failure or anything like that. And the fact that he doesn't even try and contact one Avenger, like, and I know the Avengers aren't the Avengers, but they're still out there. We see Rhodey even in this. Like, there are still people that, and again, like, we'll kind of discuss that as we go on, we get into theories. But like, I don't know, it just doesn't follow. They just kind of yeah all of that. I don't know where I'm at with this. And there is some key differences here. You spoke about at this top, there is a lot of differences within the comics, I suppose. And again, I haven't read the comics. I've just kind of done research on what the general idea is, so I have a good idea on the general outlook, but not the specifics. The Skrulls seem to be quite different as well, and they seem to be kind of challenging that Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of heel crew that they had, in that it's an interesting idea in that it's kind of a youth movement coming together. They're kind of disaffected and so on. But I'm finding that we have to fill in the blanks for the Skrulls a lot for what they're about, and kind of they're telling
yeah.
us that the Skrulls feel this way rather than showing us how they feel this way and why they feel this way. What were your thoughts on the differences that they had with the comics? And even if you want to kind of give some perspective for people who may not have seen it, what the Skrulls are like in the comics and what the story of Secret Invasion is in the comics versus what it is here.
So the thing about the Skrulls in the comics is I always actually, especially when I was a younger reader, I felt a little bit bad for them. Like you'd have some genuinely evil versions of them, but they did feel just like angered refugees to me always. So I always thought it was really weird. So as much as I wasn't the biggest fan of the Captain Marvel movie, I did really like kind of what they were doing with the Skrulls because they have been one of Marvel's big bads. I mean, you take just the Chitauri from the Avengers movie, but the Chitauri have always been like, a D player. And like the Skrulls, let's just say if the Avengers kind of concept leaked a little bit earlier than it did, and the hype was there the way it is now, I think people would have assumed the Skrulls were going to be the army of choice for that, which obviously would have hurt them because they're very one-dimensional. The Skrulls have always been seen as quite ruthless, quite parasitic almost. Yeah, they go to a place, they take the resources to an extent. Some live reasonable lives, then they move on. Like they're kind of like a swarm in that way, but at the same time they're endangered. So it's a bit of a kind of double thing. The Skrulls are always a weird one. So to see them portrayed that way in Captain Marvel is great. And the reason why I bring that up because I feel like they're backtracking on that and trying to establish this more terrifying nature of the Skrulls, which is when they assume your identity in the comics. It's closer to why you would have gone from the T-1000 from Terminator 2, that the target needs to be restrained or eliminated or something like that. So that terror element felt there, especially when they were that scene where they were stealing their appearance and then siphoning off your memories. The whole idea that your personality could be stolen, which is a very modern topical discussion you can have with so much fraud going right on the internet, getting their identity stolen every day. So there is that kind of like that real world aspect to it, but then to do it on such a intrusive level is bringing back that not necessarily cosmic horror in a Lovecraftian sense, but more like that invasion of the body snatcher sort of element of having been betrayed by essentially yourself. I like where they're going with that because the Skrulls need to have that family refugee element that was established in Captain Marvel taken away and brought back to the fact that the majority of them are essentially terraforming terrorists.
Okay. And just to kind of give context, right, for people who are coming to this and never read the comics, have never looked into it, have no kind of idea, the gist of it is a kind of the headline point of the comics. Am I right in saying is that and they hinted at this at the start, and I felt they kind of bottled it a little bit because I thought it would have been really interesting, where it's like people you've known for years can be Skrulls. So they're hinting at the fact that in the comics, there's a lot of people, even some heroes, some villains, some people that we know and we trust. And they kind of hinted at this with Everett Ross, but then they had to be like, that's an imposter. He's coming back. You know what I mean? Which I would have loved if they even followed through on it, because he's a big enough character that he's not going to ruin anything if you do get rid of him and reveal him to be a Skrull. But having him in the opening credits be revealed to be a Skrull would just blow our minds and be like, oh my God, the stakes are already huge. But that's kind of the Skrulls thing, and that's the concept of Secret Invasion as far as the comics goes, isn't it? Am I right in saying that, or is there more?
So, like in the comics, after let me see, just get the timeline right. So, if I'm correct, is the last time they did Secret Invasion storyline, it was after the Avenger versus X-Men storyline, and they've established a new set of Avengers that was led by primarily Spider-Woman and Captain Marvel. And in the comics, as far as I can remember, in the Secret Invasion, Spider-Woman turns out to be a Skrull and has been one since the reforming of the Avengers. I hope I'm getting that right. It's been a while since I've read it, but so that's the thing. Like the invasion element that the Skrulls would always do would usually be in the Avengers canon. So the fact that this is being done on a government level and not that they're trying to assume the identities of a superhero team like the Avengers it doesn't seem that different. But when you think of the repercussions of, becoming like a rebel force versus the world's most powerful heroes, it really does kind of like make you think, where are they going to go with this when the end goal was to become heroes through dubious means, and in this, they're just essentially domestic terrorists.
Mm. And that's, I don't know, I find it very interesting that they are going that angle, because yeah, you're kind of like, if I was a Skrull, I'd go for the ones with superpowers if I could get away, you know what I mean? And that's kind of
Yeah.
where what you'd want. But like at the same time, I like the way they're kind of going covert. They're trying to destabilize. They're trying to make it seem like the world is attacking each other. And again, it plays on that kind of Prescott monologue that they had on the start, where it's like, what if, and it's very current and very relevant, what if you couldn't trust the information that was out there? What if the news said one thing? What if websites said the other? And to tie that into the Skrulls is very credible and real, and it's a clever twist. I also like some small touches with them as well. Like I liked even the small touch where they had Gravik be at the end be revealed to be different people we met throughout the episode. You know what I mean? Like for anyone who didn't pick up on it, you had the person, he was the person, the couple eyeing Fury, the old man in the bar that Nick Fury bought a shot for, and the little girl before Sonya's thugs put Nick Fury in the van. So it kind of suggests that, again, while everyone's telling Fury, you're not 3 steps ahead like you used to be, Gravik is 3 steps ahead of them. So they are really scaling it well, and they haven't really explained the power scale yet. Which again, I'm open to. I'm intrigued by that. There are some new additions here. We've the likes of Gravik, we discussed, Kingsley Ben-Adir. We have, but also A-list stars as well, like Emilia Clarke and Olivia Colman. We also have some local talent, like I said, Tommy from Love Hate. Killian Scott is in there as well. So I love seeing like another Love Hate alumni, by the way, getting some MCU exposure. That's him and Nidge now. Amazing stuff. What were your thoughts on Olivia Colman and Emilia Clarke? Because again, Emilia Clarke is a bit more natural. She's done Star Wars, she's done Game of Thrones, but Olivia Colman, very fish out of water coming into Marvel. How do you think they all fit?
The Olivia Colman thing was interesting because she is such an established actor, and it only recently did I actually get around to watching The Favorite, which I absolutely loved. I thought it was brilliant. I didn't think a movie based in, like, it's not one of my favorite kind of periods of kind of like what we depicted in movies, but she was so insane. The whole setting was so opulent that I just had so much fun watching her. To see her come into this sort of a role was really, really interesting. And you kind of have to think when actors come into this sort of thing, is it a form of coasting? Are they just doing what's in right now? But I didn't get that from her. I felt like that she fell into the role very quick. Like, let's face it, she is pretty much playing herself. If you see her on the Graham Norton show, that kind of, because she's like, everyone knows her originally from Peep Show over this side anyway. So she very much has retained that natural comedic element, and to see that in that character of Sonya was pretty cool. I think she's going to fit in really well, and if she can continue the way she did in that first episode, I think she'll be a welcome fit.
I like, again, when you have Olivia Colman in any project now, she's raised the value in her name and her brand, that she brings gravitas to it automatically, like, because she doesn't pick bad scripts. You never see Olivia Colman in shite, and I'd be surprised if this was, because again, she just seems to get it. But what I was surprised most about here was how well she fit. It seems like you get some people coming in, and you get some A-list actors, and they've no idea what they're starring in. You know what I mean? There's no, like, Michael Keaton's never seen an MCU movie, and he pretty much like revealed that about himself as well, like in interviews like that he's done since. He doesn't know what's going on, and he's there's a lot of that where the stars are too big for the movie, so to speak. She seems like she's done her homework. There was almost a touch. What I loved was a scene where she was like, "Oh, well, you're extraordinary. You usually only scratch the surface of mediocrity. So well done on you pulling your socks up." I was like, is she channeling Tony Stark? Like, that's the same kind of, she's got the comedic beats of Marvel down. And I was like, that's almost Robert Downey Jr., the way she's kind of riffing, and she's offbeat, and she's just got that kind of sarcastic tone that he used to have. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh man, she's done her homework. She's bought in. So again, we didn't get to see much of her here, but I'm really, really excited by it. I also think Emilia Clarke, like, Killian Scott just fits, and that's really good to see, even if his accent is a bit off. But look, he can forgive it. He's a Skrull. But Emilia Clarke, like, again, just fits. She gets this genre. She gets this type of acting. She gets these characters. Again, I think we're just happy to see her, and she showed it. Big news headline from this. We thought, until they said, Everett Ross imposter, we thought we got 2 big deaths, but we still got 1 big death from this. Maria Hill, never someone they've really fleshed out in the Marvel universe, but she's been there since pretty much the start. Like, she's been like in that. But again, like, I was listening to a podcast this week and they estimated that she's probably had about an hour of screen time total if you include Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. within Marvel. But again, someone who has been there or thereabouts. Dead now. Again, she didn't do a scroll reveal, which is an interesting and dramatic concept that I liked, and they've established here that, like, again, you only know their scrolls once they've died. Did this hit for you? Was this impactful for you, or is Maria Hill just too much of a side character to kind of play this moment?
It was, because it was impactful. I just didn't see it coming. That's what I felt. Now, it was never a character I was ever really invested in. I know she had her followers because never show I was into, but a lot of people loved How I Met Your Mother, which obviously really brought her to the forefront. It's just a show I never was around. It's just the timing never lined up for me. But she felt like a very human element in the first Avengers movie. She was like, I don't want to say she was the voice of reason, but she was almost like the avatar for the viewer, I felt. And to see her so unceremoniously killed off in the first episode, because you have to have your hook, you have to have something that's going to bring them back for next week's episode, because for people like us, we're going to watch whatever they produce. They could, like I said, they could release a kangaroo TV show of him literally bouncing around Manhattan. I'd probably watch it.
If it has the at the start, I'm watching it. If it has the scroll.
I'm hooked. Yeah, just some blonde Australian dude with brown leather pants bouncing around looking for Spider-Man and being defeated every time he runs into someone. I'm gonna watch that. So, we're not kind of like, obviously, that market that they need to cater for in the way they need to see return viewership. So they need that hook to bring back the casual fan. And I don't know if that's going to be enough to do it, but I think people will try and wonder, like, okay, where are they going to go? I do think first episode should probably end more so on a cliffhanger, so you have more questions going into next week. So you need to at least check that out. Because after the second episode, I feel like you're invested.
Yeah.
So thinking back on it now, because at the time I was quite shocked, but now I do have to say I feel like it's a little bit cheap.
Okay, interesting. I kind of like this. There was a part of it where I watched during the week, and they did the usual thing whenever they've got a new project coming up, where they do the Marvel Legends, and they kind of it's just a recap of everything the person's been in to kind of set you up if you want to catch up without actually watching through the individual projects. And the fact they did one for Maria Hill, I'm like, oh shit, like, yeah, like she must be actually a big character. So it was a big fake out, you know what I mean? It was almost like Drew Barrymore at the start of Scream, where it's like, oh, well, they built her up, so like she's gonna be, and then it's like, oh no, dead. So I did like that. I liked the fact that it showed me the show. Again, to be continued, we might say something very different in 6 weeks, but it looks like the show is going to have balls, which I really want it to have. I really want them to be rootless. I want them to bring in some like really established Marvel characters that they've no actual plans for and just go, scroll all along, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
Deal with it. And I really want them to blow my mind and fuck shit up. And don't be afraid to mess around with IP. Don't, like, be ballsy and be brave.
But that's the scroll gimmick, yeah. Just to have your pants pulled out. It's like, yeah, and it is kind of like a Deus Ex Machina in that way. It's where, okay, we've dug ourselves in the corner. How do we get it? Is okay, scroll, done.
Yeah, exactly. Secret scroll, but like whatever it is, like it's your trick. Play it. You know what I mean? It's like in wrestling. It's like the Money in the Bank cash in. It's like, yeah, it's probably cheap, but it always works, and we love it. You know what I mean? So, dude, like, make it a gimmick, and it can be a gimmick going forward as well. Like, don't kill off all the scrolls. Keep it something there that can happen at any stage, and just make it exciting. This was kind of similar to that, where it was like, oh, they're going in and they're going to go for it. So I didn't mind it from that standpoint. And again, you're not losing much with Maria Hill. She hasn't really added much, but also we can buy from the interactions that we got in this episode that it will have an impact on Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of fridging, where it's like killing off a woman because of the impact it has on a male character. Not a huge fan of that aspect. I don't feel this is necessarily massively guilty of that, though you could argue it. but also again, it will have an impact on him. So yeah, I
Before we go
think
on, can we explain to your viewers where the phrase fridging comes from? Because it's
yes.
absolutely ridiculous. Do you know?
Yeah, I do. Go for it.
Yeah. So, in case people don't know, there was a issue of the Green Lantern in which they obviously wanted to make him a bit more vengeful towards bad guys. So they killed his girlfriend and stuck her in a fridge. How the Comics Code passed that at the time, considering DC were always getting into trouble, I'll never know. But what a ridiculous term. I absolutely love it. So let's go.
It's
Let's continue.
it's such an amazing term, but like, and it's become a trope, but it's such a niche reference. Like, I'm like, how is this
Something
become a
isn't
thing?
obvious fridging, it
Yeah.
becomes fridging.
Yeah, it's like jumping the shark. It's like a reference
Yeah.
to a very niche episode of Happy Days, but it's now become a thing that everyone says.
Episode.
Um, before we wrap up, I do want to get kind of theories. We're now at the very start. We're at the precipice, so you can get like as wild as you want. We are kind of talking about what we'd like to see, but is there anything in specific you'd specifically like to see, or is there anything you think is going to happen?
Specifically, I want to see. There's stuff I'm very curious about, like what they're doing with this Gravis character is interesting. Like, it feels like they're trying to make him into Super Skrull, which he's not. Like Super Skrull's name of the comics was Klart, I think KLORT or KLIT. I can't remember. Uh, but he from the trailer, we've seemed to have seen some powers that are very reminiscent of the Fantastic Four. But of course, the Super Skrull character in the comics got his powers by emulating the Fantastic Fours. Like we've seen him stretching, but it's more like kind of Groot's tendrils. Uh, so I'm really kind of seeing. Oh, I want to know what they're doing with this. Have they just engineered a soldier similar to how Super Skrull was? Is there going to be any fan service relating to the Fantastic Four now that we know that obviously the movie's coming out, we know for sure, but the fact that we've got some casting news and everything, I doubt we're going to get to see any of that, but could there be a hint to the Baxter building, for example, something really safe, something you can make in passing? Um, so I wonder about that. I think with the death of Agent Hill, I think we're going to see our Nick Fury return to the character he was, to a more stoic, more methodical, cold-hearted, sees what he needs to do and does it no matter who gets affected by it. I am looking forward to where they go with this, but I do feel, like I said at the start of the podcast, I think this is going to be a bigger setup. We've got New World Order coming, we've got the Marvels coming, which obviously the Skrulls tie heavily into, and not just because of the first movie, because that cosmic element that they're really be playing around with, and of course the Fantastic Four movie. So these are things that the Skrulls are intrinsically linked to. I find not necessarily New World Order, but if we're going into this government espionage element so heavily with Secret Invasion, there could be something to unpack there.
Okay, interesting. Have you any kind of secret Skrull predictions? For me, Rhodey is odds on now to be a Skrull based on they just had one clip of him and he's the only name attached that would be kind of like really ballsy, but also you can get away. It's only
Yep.
Rhodey, like who gives a fuck? Like, but also the one thing that I'd ask is if they do turn Rhodey into a Skrull, it's similar to what you're saying in that let's not make this a one and done. Let's keep this going. I don't want him to die at the end. I want it to be like, oh shit, he has fucking superhero tech and he's a Skrull and now he's outed, so now he's fucking dangerous. So
that was the one thing about Rhodey that actually was an instant red flag for me, is that he wasn't, which we've seen him doing in the other moves, he wasn't really trying to oversell the prosthetics he has on his legs or the bracing he has because of his paralysis. It almost felt like they were saying, let's be really obvious about this. Like he had absolutely no qualms walking up those stairs behind the president, keeping his pace, or even something as simple as reaching out and grabbing a banister and taking a really quick, deep breath to show he's professional. He didn't want anyone to see, it's Rhodey, he's talking with the president, but just did not have any connection back to his injury. I just felt like that's a Skrull. Straight off the bat, like instantaneously. It was like, there's going to be a few characters. I think what they'll do is they'll have one reveal and we're like, that's cool, but we knew it was coming. Then next thing, the person we didn't think at all, same deal. Because there's a lot to unpack. I'm not going to say anything because I could shoot myself in the foot.
Okay.
I love this kind of, if you'll excuse the pun, what if element of
Yeah.
Marvel, like going like, imagine if they did this, where could they go with it?
Yeah.
But if you say it too prematurely, people are just going to go, that's absolutely stupid. But then again, we're talking about comic book movies and TV shows, ladies and gentlemen. It's all stupid.
Yeah, let's be stupid. Let's look. We've got 6 weeks of it. Let's
Suspension
be
of
as
disbelief.
stupid as we like. That's what we're here for. Dan Lynham, always a pleasure to discuss Marvel with you. Can't wait for the next few weeks. We'll get in and we'll get really stupid as time goes on, and
Excellent.
then we'll make fools of ourselves by episode 6. But look, who cares?
wait.
It'll be fun on the ride. Thanks for joining us on Patreon 80.